Hello and welcome to the Tea Ticker Show. Today we have a very special guest, which is Alex from Alex Watches. Hello, Alex. How are you doing?
Hello, guys. Pleasure to be here.
So, with 430,000 subscribers,
something like
followers
that.
you have on Instagram, and the thousands of people you that follow you on YouTube as well, I'm guessing you know a bit about brands, and over the years, which brands have grown and which brands have dropped in popularity. And so, I got a question for you in that: which brands do you think have grown the most? Have grown the most, and which are the most underrated, which could possibly come back?
Well, I'd say Cartier has grown a lot in the last couple of years. If we look last couple of 3-4 years, there has been an explosive amount of interest in those pieces from the current lineup they have in the stores now, but also mainly on the vintage pieces. It's been a crazy ride for that brand, so to say, and I mean they are trying to, or they have been copy pasting their former success they made in the 70s when they launched the Must tank watches. They made that again, and 2 years ago they relaunched the collection, and it's been, I believe, a huge success for them because they are priced at a price point where it's not breaking the bank. You can actually save up for one, even if you're not making a ton of money every month. So I mean they are like 2,500-3,000 euros ish nowadays retail price, which is, you get a classic Cartier watch with the Roman numerals, the tank design on a leather strap for around that price point, quartz movement. So they have really been the last couple of years doing a great job, but also they are smart and look at their heritage. So more or less every year now there's a 100th anniversary of some model they have from their catalog. They've been producing wristwatches since 1904. So yeah, I mean they are really one of those brands, I believe, the last couple of years that have gained a lot popularity once again, because they have been a bit neglected by collectors, dealers, everybody more or less, that they are just a jewelry brand. They make watches with the latest ETA movements or quartz movements. It's nothing interesting. But I think more or less anybody that's interested in watches nowadays knows the brand and knows what they produce and the quality and the heritage and everything. And one brand that I think will be on the rise again, I hope that Piaget can make the same journey maybe, and start to focus a bit on what they did so great back in the 60s and 70s. I mean, they are now a sister company. They're both owned by the Richemont Group, obviously, and they have been focusing a bit on the wrong end of the spectra, so to say, regarding what kind of watches they make. It's been very much focused on the Polo line. They've tried to break into the stainless steel sports watch segment for a couple of years now without any great success that I know of, at least not here in Sweden. We have one retailer and I know they don't sell too many Piaget watches. So I believe they move back to their roots a bit and look on what they have made in the past. Ultra thin watches with automatic or manual winding calibers. I mean, they held the record for the thinnest automatic movement for like 30 years. I don't know, it's for a long time at least, that they still evolve and that they still use in their current models. But they've lost track a bit in my eyes at least. And I see that also for example, Breguet. Same thing there. They are known for producing some of the finest watches and dials in the industry. but they have also lost track, and everything has been so large. And I'm more of a conservative guy. I like smaller watches. So, I mean, a Brigade dress watch around 40 millimeters with those long lugs that they have and that they are known for is a bit, it looks a bit funny, so to say, if you have a 40 millimeter dress watch. And that trend is actually going slowly. Every year we see brands moving into smaller and smaller watches, and the demand for smaller and smaller watches is also, steadily going up. So I hope that this trend we've had now for like 20 years is going to fade out and never come back, hopefully. Because I mean, it wasn't that long ago that watches were around 34, 36 millimeters. It's from the 90s and the late 90s even. So yeah, I think there are a couple of brands that really have the potential that produce still top grade watches, but they have to maybe refocus a bit on which audience they try to please, and maybe go back to the roots more.
Yeah, I totally agree. So it's funny, I was going to bring up Piaget. A few things around Piaget. One thing I can tell, we've got very similar taste in watches, but that's a conversation for later, I think. But I couldn't agree more on the Piaget topic. Like, gosh, look, the good thing is so much value, right, in the vintage pieces still right now. But a question I have is around the Polo, because the original Polo was just kind of another reinterpretation maybe of the King Midas, like a real solid all gold integrated piece. What do you think, in 2023, what would that look like in a modern Polo if they was to revisit their past? How would you picture that piece?
It would be extremely expensive, that's for sure. We saw that. I mean, Vacheron introduced the 222 again last year. Huge success. I mean, massive solid gold piece, basically the same case diameter and size, with a few modern upgrades. I think, I mean, if you look at the Polo, you had both rectangular one that was more like a bracelet. You also had the round one, and that is a line they could be more inspired by their heritage in, for sure, because the new one looks a bit more like something else and a little less Piaget, in my eyes at least. Now they released the perpetual calendar, which is cool, but I mean, I'm not seeing that piece like it's going to be a huge commercial success because it's already quite expensive. But also, for me at least, I don't see at that price point. I believe there are other models from other makers that make a sporty perpetual calendar better. But yeah, it's an interesting thought how a modern Polo could look like if they take inspiration from their late 70s piece, or if it was released in 1980 even. Yeah, around that period. But yeah, I think also if you look, they have the whole Altiplano lineup with several different case sizes. But also there are, for the men's, that's also a pity, because sometimes they make a good watch, but it's focused too much on women. Let's say a 34 millimeter case size Altiplano, for example, would suit my wrist perfectly. Unfortunately, it has a pink dial and is flooded with diamonds or flowers or whatever. So, but more and more brands are going into that unisex aspect now. I mean, a couple of years ago, AP even changed their 37 millimeter Royal Oak from ladies to unisex. And that one it's quite big, even at 37, at least if you have chicken wrist like me. But yeah, did I answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, thank you.
No, so one brand which a friend of mine who's a watch nerd like us opened my eyes to was Frank Muller, and I know you've recently purchased a Frank Muller piece in a small size, of course.
Of course.
So tell me, what made you go buy into? I mean, and I really do. Before I had no interest, but then since you talk to friends and then you kind of see the passion, and then you think, okay, let's look at this, the way the numbers are, and the numerals, and it's just very funky, very nice piece. What was your thought process behind getting that piece, and also what do you think of that brand as a I mean, is it due a comeback? I think it should be now.
Yeah, I mean, to start with, they made some of the best looking watches in the 90s, because I mean, obviously Frank Muller, he came from being a watchmaker at Patek Philippe, so everything was very traditional in terms of design. They used the Breguet numerals for the hour markers. They made beautiful chronographs and stuff like that, perpetual calendars and whatnot. So they had, in my eyes, their prime time during the 90s. And then all along came the big bang watch trend with those huge pieces, and they made the move they had to survive, basically. So they jumped on the oversized sports watch trend that was. But fortunately for me, they still made this Vanguard model in a smaller version. So they have like 4 sizes, I believe. And the smallest one measures 32 millimeters across. I can show it to you guys. So here it is.
It's cool.
Wow, that's lovely. I do like that. Very nice.
So this is sold as the ladies Vanguard. It's the smallest model. It comes either, this one is automatic. You can see the movement there, maybe. Nothing too fancy. I think it's a standard ETA movement. And open case back. I would have preferred it closed, actually, but whatever. And what I like about the brand is that this one is very Art Deco, so it's very 1920s, but with a modern touch. And that's what I like about this particular model. And especially, you know, it's a tonneau-shaped case, so it wears a much larger, I'd say, rather than its specified measurements. So it's like 32 by 42, so 32 across and 42 millimeters long. So for my wrist, I have 16.5 centimeter wrist. I say that in every YouTube video, I always get the question. And I think it wears really nicely. And it comes, you know, on this black alligator leather strap with rubberized back. So it's super comfy. It sits very nicely. It has a guilloche dial. Those exploded numerals. For me, it's just a piece that I've been intrigued by Frank Muller for a long time, but never really had the chance to get to touch and feel the watches in person. I was fortunate to be able to visit their manufacturer this summer or last summer. And it was cool to see that how much they produce in-house, actually. And to see the whole process. And they have, I mean, all the machines, everything they own, it's paid by them. So they have no loans, nothing. So everything, you know, is paid by the brand. They don't outsource that much. And for the price point, I mean, the retail price is around just below 8,000 euros. And still possible to get these with a bit of discount, I believe. So if you look at Chrono24 and other marketplaces. So I believe if you want something that you don't see, because living here in Sweden, it's quite stereotyped. People are wearing their Speedmasters, their Submariners, their Seamasters. It's, you know, the occasional Tag Heuer Aqua Racer. People are quite, you know, sticking to the same kind of watches. And whenever I wear the Frank Muller, I get positive feedback from people saying like, wow, what is that? Interesting. Oh, it's a Frank Muller. Never seen one before. Blah blah blah. You know, so it's one of those pieces. It's a great conversation starter. And I mean, for me, the most important thing is the looks of the watch. I'm not one of those guys that neglect a watch just because it's a quartz watch, for example. I could have easily bought this one in quartz as well instead of the automatic, just because then I would get rid of the second hand and have a much cleaner look. So I mean, I think they are interesting for the price, but they have a long way ahead of trying to wash away whatever sins they have in the past, and it can be tough. But I mean, maybe you guys saw the collaboration they made with Revolution Watch, and like took a couple of historic chronographs and made small tweaks to them. So there's I think they are on the right track ahead, but they have a long way to go.
Another brand I think is Bulliver. I think they're absolutely brilliant. I own 2 Bullivers, and one of them being, of course, the other Moon Watch, which tends to get overshadowed by obviously the original Moon Watch. I mean, which obviously was the most important one, but it's interesting. You find his story about Bulliver, who successfully had one of their missions, and even when that happened, they knew about it. I think they probably knew about it, but they never produced it. It was only because the pilot sold his one on something like eBay that then Bulliver decided to make it, and now they've made a new one that's out this week, and they made it true to size with the proper Moon Watch. They've done it 43.3 millimeters. I think they're brilliant. I've got 3, and I think they're all brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, they also I met them a couple of years, like 3 or 4 years ago in Basel World. They have also very interesting die watches from the 70s that they have like made reissues of as well.
I have one.
They
yes.
are the 666, or what's it called? Yeah, the snorkel or something.
Yeah, there's a 66. It's called a Mill Ships. The one they've got, the Mill Ships, which is the one that the one that was replaced by the Tornet Raybill. That was the one they brought out recently. It's brilliant. Yeah, and I want a 666 as well. That's a brilliant dive watch. I think they're an excellent brand.
Yeah, also in a price segment which is good, and they make offer really much bang for the buck as well. And we have we see that many of the brands that produce more affordable watches have really shaped up as well in terms of quality, build quality, design, movements and stuff. Look at the Tissot PRX, for example. I mean, what a huge hit that watch has been for that brand. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. But I also it's easy to say look in the heritage department and take something out and make it again. But it could also be interesting to see some innovation and not just making taking the lazy way out and making reissues of this and that. I mean, to experiment more with what knowledge they have in house. For example, 8B code 1159. I don't like it. I don't like the looks of it. But from an innovation standpoint or point of view, with that case, super hard to manufacture, I guess it's something else, So I'd like to see more of that also from the brands in the future, trying to make something new and fresh and not just reissues of every model from the 70s and 80s or 60s.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for that insight. And I think we could talk all night again about all of the watches we've just discussed. But unfortunately, we're going to have to wrap up now. But thank you very much, Alex. Thanks, guys, for all the
thank you, guys.
Great questions and the great conversation. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. And don't forget to subscribe to Alex on Alex Watches on Instagram and but on YouTube also. So
thank you, guys.
Guys. Good night.
Okay. Good night, everybody.